Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all doing super well. So welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about what happened to 11-year-old Camila Luciana Borda and how her life was taken from her just 50 meters from her home. It's a really crazy case. This guy just grosses me out so much. I swear, doing the research for this case and having to look at his photo was like haunting. Like, I literally told my fiance, I was like, I think this is like the worst I've ever felt while looking at someone's photo because he just looks so creepy, and he is a creepy person and he's an evil person. So I'm sure you guys are going to get creeped out throughout this video because he just looks like so wrong. I do want to put a trigger warning because we are going to be talking about the sexual abuse of a minor. Thank you guys so much for being here and for supporting this channel. It honestly means the world to me. And before we get into the video, I quickly want to thank our sponsor, Aura. Thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. I don't know about you guys, but I am so over spam calls. I literally have my phone on Do Not Disturb the majority of the day because I just cannot handle all the spam calls that I get. And I feel like lately I've been getting more spam calls than usual. Like every single hour, I feel like I get a different call. It is so frustrating, but thankfully Aura is here to help with the problem. Data brokers make so much money by selling your information to robocallers, spammers, and others who just want to get private details from you, like where you live. Aura can identify data brokers who are exposing your information, and they can submit opt-out requests on your behalf. I know, it's amazing. So brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but sometimes they don't want to. I mean, obviously they're gonna like put up a fight if you ask them. So sometimes they won't comply, but that's where Aura comes in, and they can handle this for you, which is great because I'm not trying to sit here all day and talk to spammers, try to convince them to stop calling me. Aura also does so much to protect you and your family from online threats we just can't see. It's super easy to get started with Aura. You don't have to download a bunch of different apps like VPNs, antiviruses, etc. You get everything at one affordable price. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other important tasks with peace of mind. Stop data brokers from exposing your information by going to aura.com/Jackie Flores to start your 2-week free trial. All the information as well as a link will be in the description box down below. Thank you again to Aura for sponsoring today's video. Camila Luciana Borda was born on September 18, 2008 in Argentina. Her parents actually separated when Camila was quite young, so she grew up with her mom, Alejandra, and with her stepfather, Guillermo. They were a big family. In total, there were 11 siblings, so there was a lot of people living under the same roof. Alejandra had given birth to 7 of her own children, while Guillermo had 1 daughter of his own from a previous relationship, so they were like a blended family. They had also adopted this little boy after his mother died. Alejandra and this little boy's mom were close, so when the mom died, Alejandra was like, you know what, I'm gonna take him in. That way, she could provide for him a better life, and that way he wouldn't end up in the system as an orphan, which I feel like just shows their remarkable character and just kind hearts. They were a very hardworking and close-knit family. Guillermo was a construction worker, and Alejandra stayed at home with all of the children as a homemaker. And there was a lot to do around the house. I mean, taking care of 11 kids is a lot. There was always a lot of laundry to do, a lot of food to be cooked, a lot of plates to be cleaned up. I mean, it was pretty chaotic, but the family was just really close. They all loved each other, and despite being so many people in the house, they all got along really well. Alejandra says that Camila had a never fading smile on her face and that she would get into her mom's makeup and play with it, which I feel like is such a beautiful memory to have. I mean, I remember playing in my mom's makeup. I would literally put on her lip plumping lip gloss all the time, even though I knew it was gonna burn me, but like I still wanted to do it because I loved how it made my lips look. So it's definitely a beautiful memory that Alejandra has of her daughter playing with her makeup and just like messing around and dressing up. Camila also loved singing, and she would use a microphone sometimes to like sing to everybody. So she was just really full of life, playful, and she just adored her mom. Every single day she would tell her mom, Alejandra, I love you, with a big smile on her face, and she was just so self-motivated and diligent when it came to school. school. In an interview, Alejandra says that she never had to remind her daughter to study or do her homework because Camila knew what she had to do, what needed to be done, and she would just do it all on her own. Besides being very studious, she also spent a lot of time with her siblings and with her cousins. They would play together, have fun at birthday parties, and just hang out. Camila's death was a tragedy that deprived all of her loved ones of her beautiful soul. With that said, let's talk about what happened the day Camila was murdered. On Sunday, February 25th, 2018, Camila's mom was at home folding the family's recently washed clothes, and while she finished up, she asked Camila to go to a nearby store to go pick up a pack of cigarettes for her. Now, the store was really close to her house. It was only around 70 meters away, which was just like a really short walk. Now, a lot of people have questioned Alejandra and wonder why she would let her 11-year-old daughter go to the store by herself. And I'm sure most of you guys are wondering the same. But Alejandra says that, this neighborhood was really safe. It was a small, tight-knit community where everyone was familiar with one another, and things like kidnapping or violence was pretty much unheard of. So the family just felt really safe there, and everyone in the neighborhood knew who Camila was, knew who her mom was, so she just really felt like she had nothing to worry about. So she tells Camila to go to the store to buy some cigarettes, and Camila agrees to the plan. She puts her shoes on, and then she heads off. She got on her brand new violet-colored bike that she was recently gifted and left the home at around 11:20 in the morning. So this was in the morning, you guys. It's not like she was telling her daughter at midnight to go buy her cigarettes. Like, this was like in broad daylight when people are out and about, walking their dogs, doing yard work, etc. Camila arrived at the store, left her bike at the entrance, and then 17-year-old Milagros attended her. Now, Milagros was the daughter of the store owner, so she got to know the customers that would frequently go and said that she would often talk with Camila about like girl stuff because Camila would often go to the store, buy snacks, etc. So Milagros confirmed that Camila did make it to the store, that she bought a box of cigarettes, and then she tucked the change Milagros gave her in her pocket and then placed the cigarettes in her little basket that was on her bike. After this, Camila was off to go back to her house where her mom was waiting for her. 15 minutes had passed and Camila was still not home. Alejandra was definitely concerned. I mean, there was no reason why it should have taken Camila more than 20 minutes to do this quick errand. So she started asking her other kids if they had seen Camila, but they all said no. This is when Alejandra started to feel like something was wrong. She asked one of her kids, who was older, I believe he was 18 years old, to go with her to look for Camila by foot. She had also informed her mom, her dad, and her uncle about Camila's disappearance, so they all arrived to the house and they began doing circles around the neighborhood to see if they could find her. Alejandra said that at first she thought that maybe she was with some friends, maybe on the ride back she ran into a friend and decided to go to her house and play, or maybe she was distracted by something else. So Alejandra goes around the neighborhood. She asks if anyone has seen her, but everyone says no, that they haven't seen Camila, that they don't know where she is, nothing. One of Camila's sisters and Alejandra went to the store that Camila went to go buy cigarettes, but Milagro said that she was here but that she had left a while ago. When 1 p.m. came around, Alejandra started getting really worried. This is when Alejandra went to the police station to report her daughter as missing, and the police took this seriously, thank God. Like, I was scared that this was going to be a case where police were like, she's probably with a friend, or maybe she's like a runaway or something like that. Thankfully, police took this 11-year-old's disappearance very seriously. So Alejandra makes a police report. Police are like, okay, take us to where she was last seen. We'll help you look for her. Now, around the same time, Guillermo, the stepfather, reported back home and said that he hadn't found Camila either. No one knew where she was. It was as if she had just vanished. So when two police and Alejandra drove back to the home to begin the search, they actually crossed paths with a cousin and a sister of Alejandra's. And the cousin and the sister was like, hey, there is some stuff going down. A couple of the neighbors had found bicycle markings that led to and then ended at a house just a few houses down from Camila's, and that the neighbors were trying to get into the house because they believed that Camila was inside. Which is crazy. I can't believe that the neighbors even noticed that. That's how attentive they were in looking at details and trying to find any clues as to what could have happened to Camila. So police and Alejandra quickly arrive at said house, and while Alejandra is talking with her family about what has been going on, a few of the neighbors, along with two policemen, opened the gate to enter the property, and when they did so, they saw a man quickly glance out of the upstairs window of the house and just kind of stood there watching as they entered the gate. Now, they also said that there was really loud music playing, and that despite numerous knocks at the door to question this man, they say he wouldn't come out. Even though police clearly saw the man in the upstairs window just staring at them, this man refused to come out. So first of all, that's very suspicious. And then second of all, why is the music blasting and super, super loud? Eventually, after knocking for some time, the man finally came to the front door and answered. This man looked a little bit weird, and he was wearing nothing but army green pants and sandals. So he was shirtless. He just looked really nervous. Police say that he was swaying back and forth. He really wasn't saying much. He wasn't answering any questions, and that he just had his hands behind his back as if he was trying to hide something on his hands. Now, the reason why he had his hands behind his back is because his hands had blood on them. He also had marks on his body, so it seemed like something had happened. So while police stayed with him to question him and to just make sure that he didn't run, the other police and a couple of the neighbors entered the home to begin looking for Camila. They began looking through all of the rooms, and that's when one woman ended up finding Camila's bike hidden in a room covered with a black tarp. Now, when they looked at the bike, they could see that the cigarettes were still in the basket, which meant that on the way home from the store, Camila was abducted by this man. So the policemen and the neighbors, they continue searching for Camila, and when they get to a bathroom, they see that the door is closed. They're about to enter the bathroom, but that's when the man finally speaks out and says that they cannot go in there. Police are like, "Why can't we go in your bathroom?" And that's when the man said that there were some problems with the drainage and that the bathroom was flooded. However, neighbors and the policemen could just tell that something was wrong. This guy is so sketchy. He's acting so weird. He has blood on his hands. He has Camila's bike. There's no way that there isn't something in this bathroom. So a couple of the neighbors decide to just go straight into the bathroom to see what's behind the door. And unfortunately, at around 4 p.m., that is when Camila's lifeless body was found. She was lying on her back in the bathtub with her hands tied behind her back, a nylon bag over her head, and with a cable wrapped around her neck. Alejandra said, quote, "My mother told me that the music was loud, that no one came out even though they knocked. Then screams began to be heard from inside and more people gathered at the house. They eventually let me in and I found out what happened to my daughter." So thankfully, Alejandra was not the one that had to discover her daughter's body, because I'm sure that must have been just absolutely traumatizing if she had to have seen her daughter in the state that she was in. Now, when Milagros, the store owner's daughter, heard that Camila had been found, she was just in disbelief. She was like, "I just saw her. How did this happen? She was just alive at the store buying cigarettes, and now she was dead in this guy's bathtub?" She just couldn't believe that this had happened. Now, convinced that this man had murdered Camila, the neighborhood was filled with rage and people began destroying his house and just wanted to get their hands on this man and make him pay for what he did to this 11-year-old little girl. Now, because the neighbors were like throwing stuff and like destroying everything, this actually led to an altercation between the neighbors and the police. Neighbors began throwing rocks and anything they could get their hands on towards the police because they were angry that the police were like getting in their way. They actually even set fire to one of the police cars. Now, the reason why police were like stopping them from doing this is because, first of all, the neighbors could possibly destroy evidence that could be used against this man in court. So by them like throwing things and like destroying the house, they're essentially destroying the crime scene. So I understand why police didn't want neighbors to like take things into their own hands. Now, authorities responded to this altercation by shooting rubber bullets at them and also throwing tear gas at them. In the end, 3 policemen were hurt and 10 people were arrested for the riot. Now, one of the people hurt was actually Camila's mom, Alejandra, who was hit badly on her shoulder. Other people lost teeth, they had head injuries, cars and properties were damaged. It was just all very intense, and I totally understand why the neighbors were upset and wanted to deal with this on their own, because as I mentioned, this neighborhood was extremely close. Everyone was so tight-knit and just knew each other. So to see that one of their own was killed in such a brutal way made them so angry, and all they could think about in that moment was getting revenge. Eventually, when the situation calmed down, Camila's body was taken for an autopsy and the detained man was taken by police. Police said the situation was just so chaotic, and again, that this could have just jeopardized the trial and the evidence and just everything in the case. So thankfully, things calmed down before things could get worse. The prosecutor, Sergio Terron, said that he understands why the community is angry and that he is also angry because he's a father himself, but that police should be able to work safely to make sure that this man is detained, that he gets a trial, and that he's ultimately sentenced for what he did.
El día de ayer, cuando ustedes, con los vecinos, ingresaron a la propiedad.
Sí, una impunidad terrible. Cuando una chica sale y dice, está la bicicleta ahí, este nene entra adentro, sube, ve el cuerpito a la nena, sale corriendo con un ataque de nervio. Nosotros nos volvimos locos todos los vecinos. Le empezamos a romper la quinta, sí, de verdad. Uno de los chicos le pegó al tipo.
¿Siguieron las marcas de la bicicleta en la casa de tierra?
Sí, una vecina vio que entraba la bicicleta y acá no entran bicicleta ni motos. Entra la camioneta de la tipa, de la dueña, nadie más.
¿Y había música fuerte?
Había música, sí.
¿Ustedes creen que era para ocultar quizás?
Sí, para mí sí. Fue una coartada que hizo, qué sé yo. La nena la observaba, el tipo. Si no era Camila, iba a ser Lola.
So Camila's funeral was the following day, and she was buried in a nearby cemetery. 2 days after her death, a massive march of 500 to 700 people was held with feminist organizations and activist groups in the streets fighting for justice for Camila. They held up signs saying "Ni una más," which means not one more, and quote, "They are killing us." The community was outraged that femicides were still happening, and it seemed like nothing was being done to protect women. The year before, 292 femicides were reported in Argentina, and 17% of them were minors. People just no longer had the patience left with authorities and were just not going to let Camila's case get cold like so many other cases. Hours after the march, Camila's mom gave an interview in which she spoke directly to the owner of the house that Camila was found in. So the man that was there with the blood and stuff, he was not the owner of this house, and we will get into that in a second. So let's talk about the owner of the house. Now, the owner was a woman who was a widowed lawyer. Well, the owner of this house didn't actually live there, like I mentioned. It was just one of her properties which she was having work done at. Now, Alejandra and Guillermo say that this owner was not nice. He was just not a good person. She was really rude to the family. She would often call them like racial slurs and just speak to them in a very rude tone. She was really particular about her property and had made several formal complaints about Camila's family because everything that they did bothered this woman. So for example, if Alejandra's kids would play in the grass of her property, she would get mad and put signs telling them to stay out. And sometimes some of the horses that Guillermo had would eat the grass on her property, and she would get upset about that. So they just had a history of not getting along. Alejandra says that despite this woman always talking down on them and being rude, she was never rude back to her. Even one time, Alejandra and her family helped put out a field fire on her property, yet this woman was still rude to the family. Now, knowing how particular this woman was about her property, everyone is wondering, how did she allow this killer to end up living in her house? So now let's talk about the killer. He is 41-year-old Jose Carlos Varela. He was hired by this woman to do some work around the property, such as painting, doing repairs, maintenance, etc. And in exchange for doing the work, he was allowed to stay there because at the time, he was currently homeless. According to the owner of a nearby store, he asked Jose one time what he was doing in this neighborhood because again, everyone knew everyone was super close to each other. So when all of a sudden this random guy comes into the neighborhood and starts living in one of the houses, people are of course gonna question it. So the neighbor is like, "Hey, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" And that's when Jose told him that he had been kicked out of his old town by police, and that he kind of said it in like a joking manner. However, the store owner didn't take it as a joke, but at the same time, he was like, I guess this guy just has like a terrible sense of humor and made a terrible joke. Now, the store owner also noticed that Jose had 3 different cell phones which he would use, which was also strange to him, like why so many phones? At the time of Camila's murder, he had been living in this house since January 15th, and people knew that he was staying there because they would see him working outside, they would see him speaking to the owners of the house, to neighbors, etc. Now, neighbors say that although he was quiet and didn't really talk to anyone, they just knew that he was strange. Like there was just something off about this guy. One neighbor said that one day her 3-year-old daughter was walking outside when all of a sudden Jose motioned the girl to go over to him. Like he was just like, Vente, like come here. Now, thankfully, the little girl went running straight to her mom and told her that the man outside wanted her to walk over to him. So she took her daughter inside, and when she looked over at Jose, he was walking back inside his house. She says that now she regrets not reporting this to the police. It's definitely weird, like there's really no need for this guy to be motioning to a 3-year-old child to come with him. Now, police spoke to the owners of the house, and the owner's son said, quote, Jose was introverted and quiet, so much that he seemed mute. He responded with monosyllables. The only thing we knew is that he was an evangelist. We never imagined that he was an animal. He was repairing the bathroom and something on the roof. Once he finished, he was going to leave. Other neighbors say that Jose would sometimes just sit under trees with his dog and watch people, and that, quote, he spoke at least once with all the kids on the block. So everyone says that they just noticed his unusual behavior, but that they honestly never expected him to be a killer. So that is how Jose ended up on the same street as Camila. He was just at this lady's house doing some maintenance work, and it is just so unfortunate that this happened. And I understand the family's perspective of questioning the woman. Like, she would yell at everybody, but yet she hired this horrible man to live at her house and be in this neighborhood. This is what Alejandra had to say to the woman that owned the house. She said, quote, I hope you show your face. I know that you won't return my daughter, nor that son of a bitch. But you will pay. You, your son, and all your family, because you knew exactly who you were bringing into the house. So when police arrested Jose, he was quiet. He didn't confess. He didn't deny murdering Camila. He really didn't say much. Police ended up confiscating all 3 of his cell phones and his computer. That's when they discovered that Jose had 3 different Facebook profiles, each with more than 1,000 friends, who were mostly female minors. He would use his real name for these accounts and photos of himself on these accounts. His photos consisted of him and his friends, ex-partners, religious messages, him and his dog, photos of a young little girl sleeping with a cigarette in her mouth. I have no idea who that little girl is or how he even got that photo. And it honestly is telling that his Facebook was filled with over 1,000 friends that were young female minors. Definitely makes people wonder if he was just sitting on all 3 phones all day long, just messaging a bunch of different young girls and seeing like who he could meet up with or who he could talk to more. It's just honestly so creepy. Now, when his name was released to the public, people found his Facebook accounts and they began to flood his page with comments insulting him and expressing their anger at him for the murder of Camila. Now, there really isn't much information about Jose's personal life. However, 2 of his stepbrothers have come forward and they did do an interview in which they shared a little bit more about who Jose was. They said that growing up, Jose was a very isolated person. He wouldn't even sit at the dinner table with them. He pretty much spent the majority of his time locked in his room with his dog, and that was it. Sometimes he would go play soccer with a group of guys, and then he would regularly attend an evangelist church. His stepbrothers say that Jose wasn't a dumb guy, that he was actually really smart, and that he could, quote, build you a house out of nothing. So he was really good with his job and often designed floor plans. The stepbrothers in the interview also showed Jose's old room that he had at their house, and it was like a very dingy room with just like a bed frame that was being eaten away by humidity, and the room was just like filled with junk and trash. Now, when reporters asked them, did you ever notice anything odd about your brother? You know, anything odd about him with like children? And one of the brothers was like, no, I literally have a daughter and Jose has never looked at his niece weird. He never did anything odd, nothing. The other brother also said the same thing. He was like, I also have a daughter and like nothing has ever happened. So like this was like the last thing that they ever expected. However, they also add that they didn't really know their brother that well because, as I mentioned, he was pretty isolated. So they added that their brother was pretty much a mystery to them. Jose's father wasn't really in the picture and their mother had passed away a few years before he was arrested. Other family members of Jose did not want to be associated with him. They didn't want to be associated with the case, with Camila, nothing. And they were actually scared that people would go after them simply for being related to Jose. So they gathered all of Jose's belongings things that he had left behind in the family's home, and they actually threw it into a field and lit it all on fire. So that's kind of just like a summary of who Jose was. It definitely seems like he was a quiet, strange man that had just some very odd behavior. I just feel like the Facebook thing is really creepy to me. Like, I just can't get that out of my head. Now, there were some conflicting reports about whether or not he had a record. Some previous neighbors of his said that he already had a record because he had once tried to kidnap a 10-year-old boy, but I was not able to find any officials confirming this information. So, the trial began in November of 2018, and that's when the results of the autopsy were revealed. And real quick, I'm just going to put a trigger warning because it is very graphic. It was determined that Camila had died due to a traumatic cardiocirculatory arrest due to asphyxiation after strangulation. Forensics also confirmed that she had injuries consistent with sexual abuse, and she had lesions in her private areas. Camila did try to defend herself, and there were defense marks left behind on her body as well as on Jose. There were testimonies, and one of the more important ones was from Jose's ex-sister-in-law. Now, she testified that about 4 years ago, he lived with her for around a year since he had a fight with his family and he was kicked out. So he lived with his sister-in-law until she eventually kicked him out because she saw situations with him and her daughters that she just didn't like. She said that to her oldest daughter, he would tell her that he would give her anything and that if she needed something, to ask him for it. He also asked her to go out for ice cream with him one time. Could be seen as normal, like an uncle just inviting his niece out for ice cream, or like, telling his niece like, hey, if you need anything, just let me know. But the way that Jose would do these things just made the sister-in-law feel like this isn't right. For another daughter, he would often give her these big rose bouquets. That's definitely odd, and the mom just knew that those acts were not normal for a grown man to do with minors. And when she tried telling him this, he said that he couldn't believe that she thought he would do something to her girls. Regardless, she told him it was safer if he left the house, and then she kicked him out and hadn't had any contact with him since then. She also said that her sister-in-law had called her later on and told her that if Jose wanted to go see her daughters, to not let him because, quote, he had inappropriately touched her kid. After this, they did report him to the police, but apparently nothing was done about this. Jose was never questioned, he was never arrested. Nothing. Now, it was argued by the prosecution that Jose tried hiding the R wording of Camila by making her put her clothes back on. So when Camila's body was found, she had her clothes on. So police and the prosecution was like, how was she R worded if she's still wearing all her clothes? Well, they think that after he assaulted her, he maybe told Camila, put your clothes back on and I'll let you live, and then you can just like go home and like no one will know that this happened to you. But of course that was a lie, and that was just a ruse for her to put her clothes back on. That way he could kill her and maybe people would not discover that he had R-worded her. Either scenario is horrible, whether Camila put the clothes back on herself or he put them on for her. It's just absolutely disturbing. So moving on to Jose, he only gave his side of things when he was initially questioned, and he said that he does remember seeing Camila on her way home that day and that he had stepped out of the house to feed his dog, and that's why he noticed Camila riding her bike, but that he doesn't remember anything that came after that. So he doesn't remember abducting her, he doesn't remember attacking her, nothing. Which, who knows if that's true or if he's just saying that to like save himself. Now, his defense tried arguing that he was a schizophrenic, but the prosecution was able to prove that he knew exactly what was going on. The evidence against him was just so overwhelming, and with testimonies and Jose's DNA being found on Camila's body and her clothing, Jose was sentenced to life in prison for the R-wording and murder of Camila. It was 3 judges who ruled unanimously and said it was proven, quote, the absolute state of defenselessness of Camila, whom Carlos brought into the house from the public street, where she was then savagely beaten and where she could not scream for help because the music was very loud. And I feel like that last sentence is like very important because when the neighbors arrived, the music was blasting and it was super loud. So this was definitely intentional. I mean, he put the music on that way no one could hear Camila screaming and asking for help, and it's just so disturbing. Before his sentence was read, he was asked if he wanted to give any type of statement, but he said no. After the news was out that Jose was now going to be in prison for the rest of his life, Alejandra gave an interview in which she said, quote, everyone in the neighborhood knew her. They knew she was a good girl. He has to pay. No rape should be in the street. I never thought this would happen to me. She also said that no one thinks that they have a murderer right in front of their own house. Like, to think that he was just houses down this entire time is so disturbing, just terrible to think about. Now, Alejandra says that she really has no idea how Camila was lured by this man, because Camila was very timid and she wouldn't speak with anyone she didn't know. So she often wonders, how did my daughter get there? Like, how did he grab her? How did this happen in broad daylight? No one heard her scream, nothing. And of course, Jose has never spoken out about this, so he has never given his perspective as to what happened that day or how he grabbed her, nothing. That will probably be a mystery forever of how Camila ended up in this house, but a lot of people wonder if maybe while Camila was riding her bike back to the house, maybe he was standing outside feeding his dog, he waved at Camila, maybe he told her, hey, do you want to stop and pet my dog? And because I feel like little kids and anybody love dogs, Camila decided to stop, pet the dog, and then that's how Jose abducted her. That's one way that it could have happened, or maybe Camila was riding the bike and then Jose just came up and snatched her. Who knows what really happened that day, but it's just so freaking sad. Oh my god, it just breaks my heart. The fact that she just quickly went to go run an errand and then was supposed to be back home within 15 minutes. And then this horrible thing happened in broad daylight is so frightening. Alejandra made this post on Facebook with a photo of her entire family and wrote, "This is my family, all of us, until a son of a bitch destroyed an angel, one of the loves of my life. Why must there be people like that? To my children, I love you. Cami, I miss you." To honor her on what would have been her 12th birthday, a large number of people gathered to celebrate her life. There were balloons and people wrote heartwarming messages on posters like, quote, "The neighborhood and city still remembers you. Cami is always with us and we miss you." They all let the balloons into the sky so that they could reach high all the way to where Camila is in heaven. It was just a really touching and just heartwarming ceremony, and although Camila is no longer with us, everyone says that her spirit will always live on and she will forever be remembered and loved. Alejandra says that it feels like time stopped, that this just doesn't feel real, that on the 1-year anniversary of Camila's death, she still couldn't accept that this was real, that she wasn't with Camila, that she hadn't seen her play in a year, that she hadn't felt her hug in a year. She just says that it feels like Camila is like visiting at her dad's house or is like on vacation somewhere, and she's like, you know what, people must think that I'm crazy, but I still talk to her, and when it feels like I can't just give anymore, I have a notebook in which I write to her, and it feels like one day she will read everything in this notebook, and it's just a way for Alejandra to vent. Camila's siblings have also not forgotten about her. They often release balloons in the sky to her. They cut flowers for her and place them by her photos. Everyone is just so affected by this, and it just breaks my heart that this guy had to tear this family apart. Now, her younger siblings did have a harder time processing this because they just didn't really understand what happened to their sister. They would ask their mom, "Where's Camila?" And the mom would have to explain to them, like, Camila's not here anymore, etc. But they just couldn't understand that. So eventually, most of the siblings did end up moving away because it was just too painful to live in the same house without Camila and to basically relive everything that happened that terrible day. They now live in another city in a home that the state actually gave them to start a new chapter in their life. They did keep the old house still though, and Alejandra says that she and Guillermo often go to the house, keep it clean and keep it in good condition. The family also received psychological assistance, which is very good, and I hope that that did help them deal with everything. It has just been really difficult for everyone. Alejandra says that she has struggled to just not lie in bed all day long, that she struggled to be alone, and that she was actually scared. She also said that she couldn't even sleep without the lights on. That's how scared she was. The pain that they have gone through is just unimaginable. Camila's story has touched so many lives, and another mother named Monica, whose daughter, Micaela Blanca, was murdered by a man who groomed her online, kidnapped her, and then R-worded her just 2 years before Camila, said that it was really distressing to learn what happened to Camila because Camila's story and Micaela's story had so many similarities. They were similar in the sense that an older man was able to lure a little girl to them. She continues to spread awareness about grooming and says that she wishes she could do more to prevent this from happening to any little girl. And we honestly don't know if somehow Jose had already spoken to Camila before. If people say that he would often wave to kids in the neighborhood, maybe he was speaking to Camila before and she grew to trust him, and that's why on that day she went with him, because she trusted him in a way. It's just all really, really scary to think about, especially like I said, his Facebook profiles, because he was messaging minors, so maybe he was also trying to groom them. Now, a neighborhood library opened up and they named it after Camila, and they hold events there for children and the community, and they have a huge selection of books for children to go in and read. It's a very thoughtful way to keep her essence alive. I'll end today's video with what Camila's family said 5 years after her passing, which read, quote, "My little girl, how am I not going to be unwell if today our lives changed 5 years ago? It was the worst day of my life, and that was a point in which I stopped living and my soul left with you. I still ask myself the same thing. Why you? I still look for you in every kid's smile. 5 years passed and I still feel the same pain and still remember that damn day like it was yesterday. I love you and will love you forever. I miss you like you have no idea. You'll always be my little girl, my everything." And with that, that is what happened to 11-year-old Camila Borda. I know it was such a difficult case to listen to, and it's just so frightening. I feel like when the sister-in-law first reported Jose for inappropriately touching one of the daughters, I feel like police should have done something about that. They should have arrested him. They should have at least questioned him. It's just really sad that this guy was just out there and around children, and you just never know who your neighbors are, or who your neighbors hire, or who's around the neighborhood that just shouldn't be there. It's just truly frightening, and it's so sad that Camila's life was taken from her at such a young age. I would love to know what you guys think about this case, and if there's ever any other cases that you would like me to cover, please make sure to leave me a comment down below, or you can submit it through my case suggestion form, which is in the description box down below. Thank you guys again so much for being here, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys!